Awesome.
We good?
Yes.
I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023 meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion's, the agenda is approved. I hope everybody's had an opportunity to read these wonderful minutes from the September 5th, 2023 meeting. Like a motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. Hearing none, we will move forward with the approval of the minutes of the September 5th, 2023 meeting and move on to action item 2A, the 8% general obligation bond.
Yes, sir. And I will turn this over to Carol Clark, our legal bond counsel.
Excuse me?
I will turn this over to Carol Clark, our legal bond counsel, to talk about the 8% general obligation bonds.
Great. And what I think I'm going to do is like we do in the board meeting, I'll go ahead just so that everybody understands, the first thing that we're asking. So I'll just go ahead and read the motion and then we'll have the discussion going forward. So this is the recommended action for all those watching out there in cyberspace land is a motion to approve or motion to recommend to the board to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of the general bond obligation series 2023B in the principal amount not exceeding $95 million to fund the following. Please take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, as Mr. Grabowski said, we've got $95 million general obligation bonds that we're asking to be approved. And really, these bonds will fund two different purposes. Just shy of $30 million will be used to make the December 1 payments on all of the installment. And as you may recall, these were the bonds that were issued by CEF, the Nonprofit Financing Corporation, that issued bonds on behalf of the school district originally in 2004, 5, and 6 to fund a very long list of schools. And we're still making the payments on those bonds. And so the district issues debt twice a year. We issue the spring bond anticipation note to make the June 1 payments. And then in the fall, we issue a general obligation bond to make the December 1 payments and also to retire the bond anticipation notes issued in May of each year. So part one of this is $29.5 million will be used to make the December 1 payments. And then the remaining roughly $65.5 million will retire the notes. And in addition to funding the June 1 payments, the notes also paid the fixed cost of ownership that we fund every spring to do the fixed cost of ownership projects that are basically undertaken over the summer months. And despite the size of this issue, it will be retired in full on March 1st of 2024. So we issue, it's basically very short-term debt that's issued to meet these ongoing obligations, and then we retire it, and then we'll start back over again next year.
Any questions from the committee members?
No questions. I'm going to abstain from voting on this just because my employer is involved with the issuance on that.
Appreciate it. I see Mr. Calhoun has joined the meeting.
Yeah, I'm here. No, I have no questions, but as opposed to that standing, we need a recusal.
I'm sorry, Darren, what'd you say?
I said, as opposed to abstaining, we need a recusal.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Fair enough. If the note will note, if the record will note the recusal. On the behalf of Mr. Hallis. Hearing no discussion, I'd like to make a motion to amend to the board to approve the resolution authorizing the issuance of the general obligation bond series 2023B in the principal amount of not exceeding $95 million to the fund the following as stated. in the action item. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All against, hearing none. The motion would recommend this action. Moving on to item 2B, which is a motion to recommend to the board to approve the reallocation of funds as shown as the attached resolution. Mr. Narowicki.
Rocky, that's okay, sir. That's okay. Good afternoon. So I'm here to request approval to reallocate $1 million from our classroom display technology replacements and 3.431 million from student mobile devices into our technology infrastructure budget. This is out of phase 4. This will help us replace a lot of the end-of-life PA systems that we've been working so hard on. And this will get us a lot closer to replacing all the C4 or the end-of-life device or schools that have end-of-life devices. Any questions?
Any questions, committee?
Just curious, does this mean that we've been more successful at recapturing and maintaining the mobile devices from our students? Is that what's allowed this to happen?
Yes, sir. We were able to get some excess funds in phase 4 as well. So that supplemented the budget that we already had. And the devices that we had that were expected to go end of life for the Chromebooks, we actually were able to get a little bit more time out of. So we're in pretty good shape there with the current funding.
Great.
What do you think will be next year?
With the student devices?
Yeah.
We'll still be in great shape, sir. Again, with that excess funding and with the phase 5 program, I think we're pretty well have the life cycle down, that as the devices age out, we just replace them on a continuous cycle. We're in constant mode of replacement.
And is this adding more schools to the technology that we're adding for the PA system, or are we still looking at trying to pull together the money for the ones that we already have set?
So it'll be a constant. Once we get done with these C4 schools or the condition rating 4, we'll be moving into the C3s that'll be moving into C4. So this will be an ongoing process. So we won't have, hopefully we'll never have 30 schools or 38 schools in that category again.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Rock, if I can just add real quick, just to clarify. So we do not have looking ahead to the future, to Mr. Cahoon's question, you do not have a financial replacement plan for the C3 schools yet, because we moved ESSER money away from this project and you brought phase 4 money into this project for the PA systems, correct?
That is correct. I do have a spot of my phase 5 or a portion of my phase 5 budget allocated towards these, but nothing to the size of what we would need to keep that life cycle going. But we will continue every year replacing systems. But yes, sir, you are correct. This allocation is really to replace 3.8 million of the 4 million that we lost in the ESSER funding.
Check. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So with that being said, that we're replacing 3.8 of the 4, looking down the road, how are we going to continue to keep the life cycle going?
We're going to be looking at our fixed cost.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
As Tom was leading to, we'll have to take a look at our fixed cost of ownership budget. We'll obviously continue to manage every year on the replacement cycles for all of our systems and see if there's sweep up money available to roll over. So we'll be managing that. I mean, we'll be looking ahead on that each year to see what funding could be provided to fill that void.
And how big is that? How big is the void so far?
Well, I would say that it was the amount we pulled out of here. The amount we pulled out of here so far from ESSER funds is a void we have to backfill eventually.
So if we're pulling out 3.8, backfills 3.8.
Because Tom filled it with the phase 4 revenues, We'll just have to keep looking ahead to see when that's due. Right now, as Tom pointed out, for the foreseeable future, right away, we're in pretty good shape. It all depends upon how fast those C3 systems drop to C4. And that's something Tom and his team will have to take a close look at. Tom, I don't know if you have an expected service life on those yet. I would expect it's at least a year or two, correct?
Yes, sir. And while we don't plan on it, by pulling out all these older systems, we can cannibalize those systems and keep some of the spare parts that we can no longer get on the open market. Excuse me. And that will at least help us keep them alive, if you will, for a little bit longer period of time. We'll be able to do some repairs that we currently cannot do.
Good point.
So right now at C4, we had, was it 38 schools? Is that the right number?
Yes, sir.
What does the C3 number look like?
C3 is a smaller number. We started refreshing these systems about 4 years ago. I don't have an exact number. I can get that to you in a board update, but I believe it's less than 12. It might be 12 to 15.
And I know this is a loaded question, but having just gone through a totally different platform update where we got rid of all of our Chrome, as you see it in the near future, looking way ahead 5 years down the road on the technology advances that we're starting to see, what is the possibility that we may be facing in the near future and need to replace the Chromebooks?
I think the Chromebook technology, there's no crystal ball, but I think that the technology for a small consumer grade device, if you will, I think that will always be there in some market shape or form. So while the Chromebooks that we use, it might be called something different, but I really do think that generic device or that small kind of tablet device will always be around.
So really, it will fall back on us having to upgrade more of our access requirements rather than the hardware.
Potentially. But I think that, again, our networks are able to support all that now, and we have Chromebooks, so we'll just kind of change names, change models, hopefully.
Good. Excellent work.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Then I'd like to put forth a motion that we recommend to the board to approve the reallocation of funds as shown on the attached resolution regarding the 2022 capital program phase 5 sales tax technology replacement and upgrades budget reallocation. All in favor, say aye.
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 Against? Nay. Not hearing any nays. The motion passes. On to the board. Next is item 2C, the fixed cost of ownership for fiscal year 24 budget reallocation. And what's being considered is a motion to approve the reallocation of funds as shown as attached to the resolution. Mr. Bowery.
Yes, sir. We currently have $1.1 million in our program contingency for the FY24 fixed cost of ownership program. We'd like to move some of those resources in order for us to be able to execute projects that are necessary. It will still leave $300,000 in program contingency if there is an urgent and compelling need before the end of the year. But the reallocation now will allow these respective programs to begin executing and completing it before the end of the fiscal year. We went to each of our 18 program managers, asked for their input on what the highest and best needs for the resources were. We've balanced the requests and believe that we can provide funding to all 5 programs that requested funds for different needs. Most of it would go to facility maintenance, 540,000 of the funds, and the schools and locations are listed in the board agenda write-up. Nutrition services, looking for a portable trailer cooler in the event one of our coolers breaks down. We have 160 walk-in coolers that we have had issues with, and it's nice to have that ability to save food before it becomes unusable. And we're able to rotate that temporary trailer around. Media center modernization. This is the next library setup that's on the recapitalization replacement plan. Fine arts, there was a need for Stall to receive some additional instruments. And finally, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. It'll go to the highest resource allocation requests. We're still evaluating some of those right now, so I don't have the specific schools, but it's about 120,000 for that program. Again, all told, an $800,000 reallocation being requested.
Any questions from the committee members? Mr. Bowery?
I'm just curious, your contingency is down to 300,000. We've just started October. How do you feel about that for the balance of the year? And have we been this low in years past?
Well, we normally start the year around the $200,000 level. And what we have consistently found is that at the end of the year, in addition to the amount of remaining contingency, is we have programs that aren't able to expend all of their resources generally because of supply chain issues or cost overruns that we can't buy what we wanted. And so we end up having money to sweep up at the end of the year to handle any of those urgent and compelling needs at the end of the year.
So in a weird way, you in a sense have some extra contingency in the sense that something else will not get done.
Correct.
And are those
And we've been successful. We haven't had an issue yet in any of our previous years where we ran out of funds that were absolutely needed at the end of the year. Good question.
Can I add to that too? The program contingency is increased every month by the interest earned. So the 800,000 is kind of what we've earned since May. So it'll continue to build back up. So we may be able to reallocate again in the spring.
Any other questions?
No, that was my question about the interest.
Any other further questions? Hearing none, I'd like to propose a motion to recommend to the board to approve the reallocation funds as shown as the attached resolution in regards to the fixed cost of ownership FY24 budget reallocation.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. Hearing none, the motion passes and we'll move on to the board for consideration. Next up is item 2D, the approval of contracts greater than $250,000. Ms. Carlin.
Thank you, sir. So these are the contracts that we've captured through September 20th that are either funding or requests for purchase or contracts over $250,000. There are 7 projects totaling a little over $5 million. Most of this includes life cycle replacement of Chromebooks as well as staff devices, new flooring for the early college high school, architectural and engineering services for the design of a Stall High School classroom expansion and other items. And then there's some copyrighted technology material with Teacher Toolbox for iReady, and then Event Works, which is event rental setup for graduations and other things of that source.
Any questions for Ms. Carlin from the committee?
Yes. This is Velma Stamp. On the Event Works contract, you say that did you just negotiate this contract or is this a standing contract that you've had? You said it's a 5-year term contract. Is this one that you just negotiated?
No, this is Steve Hamer with Facilities Management. No, this is just negotiated. This is a 5-year contract that I think, or I'm sure goes to 2024. So we start off the year with this contract with an initial purchase order. And then once the school year gets underway, we'll have a better picture of the exact need, or at least a projection of the exact need. And what this does is just increase that initial purchase order so it covers what we believe we're going to need throughout the rest of the school year for setting up for those events.
So when you put this out for bid, what type of value did you attach to it? How did you bid it out? What was the potential value over the 5 years?
I'd have to get back with an answer on that. Again, this initial period preceded my time. So the details of how it was actually bid out initially. I might not have at my fingertips. Maybe someone else on the call might have that information. But again, we've got another year on it, and we'll have another approach to procuring either new vendors or our procurement that will bring somebody else on board. But how the initial procurement was done, the layout in terms of what we projected, I don't know that I have the details readily available.
Okay. On the contract for the other CCSD contract on line 4, is this a multi-supplier contract? Do you have more than one contractor under this contract, or is Omar's the only contract for the flooring?
Jasmine, do you want to answer that or you want me to?
Sir, if you could answer that question.
So we do have multiple vendors. We do have multiple vendors for this program. This is a unique, I don't want to call it unique because we do this on several different types of building systems for our capital program. We call it strategic sourcing by hiring and contracting for flooring contractors directly. We receive, I guess I call it economies of scale for all of our capital projects. So rather than have the general contractor buy the flooring for one individual project, we manage this across the entire capital program and bring those vendors in. So it is multiple vendors. My recollection is that we allow them to compete against each other within that contract for pricing, but we also look for fairness across those that receive the award to make sure that we're level loading it to some extent, as long as the price is reasonable.
Okay, so how many bids did you get for this particular award? How many?
I don't
vendors
have
bid
that
on?
answer, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get back. My understanding is this is a contract and we're able to just, pull the folks that are on the contract to use them because they're on the CCSD, procurement.
Well, I guess I just heard a little differently. It's a multi-supplier contract, but it's from what I just heard, it sounds like you still have them bid within that contract. You still have the suppliers on that contract.
Ma'am, if you want, I can get clarification that before the end of the meeting. We can get an answer on
Okay.
that question for you. I apologize for the confusion.
Okay. So on line 5 for the solicitation, so can you give us an idea of who made up the panel for that solicitation? And I mean, how many members were on the panel? And can you give us an idea of what some of the evaluation criteria that they used to award that contract?
Certainly, the selection panel consisted of myself, Executive Director of Capital. It also consisted of Dale Coyer. He's the president and CEO of the construction management firm that's going to be managing the project. And it also consisted of Mr. Steve Larson, who's the principal of Stall High School. So committee made up of 3. We look at several different criteria whenever we're evaluating those that are interviewing for the particular project. That includes their past performance, also includes the personnel that they select and their abilities to work on a particular project and the experience that they have behind themselves. It also includes their ability to meet time and budget on other projects that they've done within the last 5 years. We also look at the location of the firm as well and the knowledge that they have. Any recent workloads as it pertains for this project as an architectural project. So their workload as to whether if they have designs within the district or, a heavy workload from a design perspective outside the district. We also look at creativity of how they have, taken the vision of the school and the idea and put it on paper. So we look to see how creative they are. We also look to see how compliant they are with building codes and standards when there are, presenting the work. We also look at the MBE minority participation in the different projects that they have. So it's a multifaceted review.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Grabowski, I'm prepared to go back and ask answer the flooring question. So Ms. Stamp, to answer the flooring question specifically, this specific project was not bid by Omar. It is one of the multiple contractors that does have the contract under unit pricing. So they did bid initially with unit price. We do have occasion when we allow them to bid against each other within that contract, but we did not do it on this one. And we would have them bid if there's economies of scale. So if it's a larger project where the unit pricing should be a little bit lower, we may have them compete. But in this case, Omar indeed was provided the contract based on their unit price under the existing contract.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? On item 5, we had 6 proposals, and then going back to, the panel that reviews this. Can you walk me, are we going at the lowest price, or do we have other factors that kick in that would put this up, that it's not the lowest price on the bid?
So for the architectural service, we actually don't know what it's going to cost. They have to interview first, and we pick them based on the criteria that I mentioned. And then once we get and we rank the firms that are interviewing for the project, then we pull the proposal amount, and at that time, we know what the amount will be.
Can you run it by one more time? I'm a little slow on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so up front before the interviews, we don't know how much it's going to cost. We have them to come with an envelope. And so when they interview, they're competing against one another. And so we look at all of the criteria that I mentioned, of course, how they interview as well. And so after we determine and we rank, the interview candidates, whichever one is the top ranked person, we open their envelope. And at that time, we would know what the cost would be for that service.
So they don't act, so do they submit a proposal to you first and then you invite them for an interview? How does that process work?
Yes, they submit a booklet with all of the criteria that I mentioned, and they'll have, of course, images, they'll have the workload, they'll have who they want to work on the project. It'll also include the engineers, civil engineer, all of the team that's going to make up the project. It's a pretty thick booklet, and those are their official proposals. But when I say proposals, it's not a number, it's just information. And based on that information, we will evaluate that information and then select who is going to actually interview for the job. Once they interview for the job, we select the top ranking candidate, and then we open an envelope that has, the costs associated with their services.
So the criteria is that you're evaluating them against. Do you have a weighting for each of those categories?
There is,
or is it just a discussion that the three of you have to say who you think should have it?
There is a weighting criteria. I don't know off the top of my head right now what percentages it is, but it's what the criteria is divided up evenly. So if there's, 8, we'll divide it evenly between the 8 out of 100%. But I can get that information for you the exact percentages.
So, Michelle, one thing I didn't follow in that is if we evaluate them on these criteria and then we open the envelope and there's now a cost to that, it sounds like the cost is not a consideration in the selection, but I think I'm missing something.
Well, cost is considered. We already start off the project with a budget, and we budget a certain amount for architectural services. So as long as they are under that amount of money that we budgeted up front for architectural service, we of course go with the top ranking person. I haven't ran into a case since I've been here that that amount was over what the architectural service would be, which is fortunate. But yeah, it is a factor because we have it budgeted, but they've always been under since I've been here.
It's not weighted in the criterias. Its cost is not weighted in the criterias.
That's correct. The cost that is weighted in the criteria, of course, is whether or not they were on budget with other projects that they've had experience with. We do look at that from that standpoint.
Right. So Jasmine, so basically what you're saying, we do a blind bid so we can get the best project out of all of them. We're not just looking at the cost of it. Because sometimes, that lower cost may not be the best work. So we go in looking at the best project that for the school and for the district, and then we come in, and as long as they under, then we good. If not, then let's say I know you haven't been through one, I went through one with the state, but where everything came in over. If not, would you go to the next two that you had selected, or would y'all move forward and try to get the lower cost down?
I would have to get back with you on that. I don't want to speak from that procurement side. I haven't went through that yet, but
Yeah.
I would have to defer to procurement. But I can certainly get that answer for you.
Yeah, like I said, I've been through it. It was horrible. We had to go back to the States. It was not fun.
I agree with Mr. Calhoun. I just had it happen. So whereas we had budgeted in so much, opened up the envelope, and it was over and above the budget. And we had to go back to the state and to redo the whole process. But that's state. So I'm glad to hear that it's never been one of your problems, that everything's come under budget. And I think this looks like a very cookie cutter type of project. So I don't think there was that much of a criteria put into what exactly the design was. It was more as to, from what it appears in the description, just trying to come up with what the mechanicals were going to be to complete this project and the architectural needs. So, and the reputation. So I have no problem with the way the criteria is, but I do see where there is that a potential that if you have something, you open up that envelope and it's over the budget, that we need to look into something to make sure that we've got that within an SOP as to what to do. But anyway, any further questions?
I would like to add on to that. I just got a text message because everyone's watching. So we actually did have a project. It wasn't under the Phase 5 program, but it was under the Phase 3 sales tax program, where we did have an architectural service that came over budget. And what we did is we went to the next group that interviewed for that project, and we opened their envelope and saw whether or not they were within budget, and they were. And so we went with them for that services. So thank you to the person that's helping me and text me just now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds like there's a process. Good.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more follow-up as well. I was asked a question earlier, I believe, about item number 7, which was, if I understood the question correctly, what was the cost criteria which we awarded this particular contract? It is based on the proposals that we received. We evaluated them based on the cost per unit. For example, you would get a cost per chair, a cost per table, a cost per sound system. And so that's what led us to the selection of this particular contractor. And that's I assume, going to be the same criteria that we will go for when we renew this contract next year. So hopefully that answered the question that I got earlier.
Excellent. Any further questions? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to recommend this to the board to approve the contracts on the attached list regarding the approval of contracts rated 250,000. Have a second?
Second.
All vote, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. We will recommend this on to the board for consideration. Next on the agenda is item 2E, the monthly Head Start financial report. And there's a motion being recommended to approve the June 2023 through August 2023 2023 CCSD Head Start, Early Head Start Financial Report and Credit Card Expenditures. Ms. Foxworth.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Dabrowski, Committee Chair Calhoun, Acting Superintendent Huggins, and Audit and Finance Committee. As a governing body of the Head Start grant, the performance standards, our regulations state that it requires review and approval of monthly financial statements, along with the detailed credit card expenditure. The financial report and the credit card statement presented covers July 2023 through August 2023. It was clarified to us in a recent training that our understanding of frequency is a little bit different. The Board of Trustees and our Policy Council, which is our Parent and Community Council, needs to approve and review these more than quarterly. We therefore revise our policies to present a financial report every other month to allow all charges and adjustments to be processed. So moving forward, you'll hear from me every other month with this report and the credit card expenditures. So you have them all, and I'm available to answer questions as well as the Director of Head Start, Dina Davis, and our Financial Supervisor, Avis Rock.
Any questions, Ms. Foxworth, from the committee?
I have no questions. I understand we have to do this monthly. I was just hoping we weren't about to go through all 19 pages of the credit card report.
And I have a question on the P card expenses. We are looking at them. Why?
Well, the why is the federal government says that not only we tried in previous years just to have the governing body just do our overall, but what the regulations say is that you're supposed to look at our P cards too. So that's the why.
So here's the follow-up question.
Mhm.
If I'm reviewing them and I'm making the recommendation to the board, is the board then taking the position or being put into the position of approving the credit card, the P card purchases?
We have to review them. We have to send them to the board. So yes, it does. I don't know if you have to approve of every single item, but it does say that you reviewed it. And I guess they're approving it too, then yes. And you are approving what we're spending. And so therefore I have to be very diligent about every dime that is being spent. I was always diligent about every dime, but now because multiple people are looking at it, we're being very prudent and we're really having procedures in place. So as Ms. Rock and I went through it, I know exactly why there's SLED. I can tell you pretty much between her and I and Ms. Davis, we can tell you about every expenditure if you have a question.
But really what we look at waste, but I mean, y'all are staying on top of it.
Yes.
But it doesn't really make sense.
This doesn't make sense at all.
It's
I know you say it doesn't make sense, but from an audit perspective, credit cards are high risk. And so not to say it's being abused, but there's potential. And then sometimes the group may have to make purchases that appear just from looking at the charge. It may appear that, oh, that charge is out of the norm. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at it, you're questioning those things to make sure that they can justify why certain stores are being, purchases are being made. So I know everybody thinks that we don't want to look at all these credit card charges, but it is a high risk area. And you can a lot of times detect things just from the purchase itself. So just scanning the purchases, I don't see where it should be a problem, just to give them that comfort level that, okay, somebody else has looked at it and scanned it and didn't see anything that looked out of the norm.
in years past, I thought we had a specific audit of the P card processes and actions.
So I don't know if audit's the right word, but I mean, we have procurement staff that look at these P card charges monthly and reach out if something doesn't look right or if they can't get a receipt for something. So that's already taken care of before it even comes to y'all, as well as the accounts payable invoices. You know, that's all of our invoices have to be paid with a purchase order and a packing slip. And, so all of that, all of those audits, if you will, or those internal control processes have taken place before it comes to the board.
And I'll add even one more step. The managers of the person that holds a P card reviews the
you,
purchases
Jeff.
as well. So there actually is an additional level.
I guess my point is that it seems like the board needs to have the ability to delegate the review of this to some other body, because it's not rational or workable that, I mean, we, let alone the board, can go through and look at, $42 expense items with $1 billion budget. It's just, it's not, we're frankly, we're kidding ourselves if we can do that effectively. And so there must be a way for us to delegate that responsibility to some other body that is capable of doing that, whether it's to an outside firm or something, that a board can reasonably rely on that, because you have the ability to rely on outside experts.
You're just scanning purchases. You're not asking for detailed receipts or for them to justify the information they provided. You're just flipping through 19 pages just to, see if you see any vendors that or suppliers or types of expenses on here that looks out of line for the type of activity that this group is performing. So, I mean, based on the charter of this committee, I think it is, unless you're going to revise the charter, based on what I read, that is our responsibility.
The audit, yeah, I agree. And yeah, I know we already said we get the receipts and everything. That's all handled in-house. And I have one question, Ms. Carlin. What is the limit on the cards?
$2,500.
500, right? And so, to add an extra thing to what Ms. Staff was saying, like, say if you see a purchase that's for 2,300, but then you see the very next day you see another purchase for 1,100. You can see that, right? That inconsistency. Okay, they tried to play the P card system to where they tried to stay under the 25. So yeah, I mean, again, just to get, we have to look at, Ms. Foxworth said, the federal government said we have to look at it. It's also part of our charter. I guess we have to. I don't see any inconsistencies with this. This seems just fine to me. So I think we can go ahead and just move forward and send it over to the board. And I think what we have to do at the board meeting is explain exactly that we're not about to sit up there and say, what was this Amazon marketplace from August 23rd? So yeah.
Well, I think also to Mr. Bowery's point, you have to, if you look at the procedure, the way it works, I mean, I don't know how many P cards you have in your department.
Well, with Head Start, we have 2, but the primary is Avis Rock. And so she does our primary purchasing. So she'll always join me in these meetings. And so we do have an internal process even before it gets to the department, department process and the school district. And then obviously, and we're obviously looking at every dime, because we only have a finite budget too, that we want to make it through the entire year, supporting the students. So
Which I think is important. This is not like we have like 15 P cards out there, and then we have managers that are then responsible to sign off on it before it comes up to you for review. And we still have procurement looking at this through, the finance department. So I really don't, another set of eyes, Ms. Stamp, I kind of agree. But I mean, I'll give you an example for explanation. There are a lot of hotel expenses here. Why would Head Start need a hotel?
Hotel expenses before out-of-state travel to regional offices. At any conference that's held outside of 150 miles from our home base, with use hotels, but we allow. It's not always the requirement. It's just if they require overnight stay or multiple days.
And then so the travel request would then go through the procurement process through Ms. Carlin's department. So right there, you've got the other additional audit. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's there. The federal government requires it. Where it got me is, and I don't see it, which would have been that the board then, by reviewing this, would be somehow held accountable if something had happened. I think there are enough stop gap measures within on the overview, that's not really for something for them to concern themselves about.
And please
And
know,
hopefully they won't go too
we
deep.
will continue to be extra tight, so.
The rest of the financial statement looks great. Any other questions of Ms. Foxworth? Then I would like to make the motion recommending that the motion to approve the June 2023 through August 2023 CCSD Head Start, Early Head Start Financial Report and Credit Expenditure moves on to the board for approval. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. Hearing none, the motion passes. Will be moved on to the board for consideration. Thank you very much. You guys do a great job. I'm going to throw this in, Ms. Foxworth. You saw the letter from the federal government. Well, not so much of the shutdown. I think it was more of, just giving anybody a heads up that, excellent. Thank you. Moving on to item 2F, the committee charter and membership. This is, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Calhoun, since he has been actively working on this and is all the wonderful documents that he has produced and recommendations. Mr. Calhoun.
Yes, so basically what as we've been talking about this over the last couple of months, and I wanted to basically test out how we can actually do an annual review of our charter, and which you will see at the end of the revisions that I made. But I wanted to do it as a process, to basically just test out a process with it, where we really start looking seriously into revising our charter. I wanted to start in August. September, tell you all what I wanted to do. October, we bring it to, we bring it up and have a discussion here to where it can eventually go to the board for the end of October. And I want to do it that way so we can always have a yearly look at our charter. Even if nothing's going to change, we have a yearly review of our charter. But then it's also, we're not just putting something through within one meeting or so, or just a few people talked about it. We have a months long process of actually going and doing something serious, because everything that we do right now is not just affecting us for a year, it's affecting us for about 5 years out. So we need to go slow with actually making these changes or whatnot. And so that's what this is what I came up with. This time around, we were really looking at committee membership, because that's something a big question that we had throughout this entire year, of how many people can actually be on our how many people can actually be on our committee. So that's where I really wanted to work hard on, and then also how we bring people on to onto the committee. I've put, I think the easiest way to look at it, attach the track changes version, as well as the Excel version that shows what it was before the original, but then also the changes that were made. And if you go to the Excel spreadsheet, it would, I think that'll probably be the best way to look at it. Of course, the first one would be just updating the day of when the charter will be changed, will be updated. And right now it says 10/3, but it would be later on as farther approved. So that would probably end up changing over to 10/28 if it gets through that way. The second thing we looked at was the members of the committee are appointed by the chairman of the board and informed by a majority of the board. We wanted to bring in a more holistic way of a more detailed way of how do we bring on board members. So no, actually, this is for our board members. So this says trustee members of the committee are appointed by the chairman of the board and trustees and affirmed by majority of the board. There was something changed there. That might have just been, there was a typo in there that I think we changed. So let's move on to the next one. The committee shall be comprised of at least 6 independent voting members to include a minimum of 2 board members and an individual with information technology expertise. This one we moved over to the committee shall be comprised of at least 6 and no more than 9 independent voting members to include a minimum of 2 board members and at least 1 individual with information technology expertise. So it's giving us that gap, that top end, because the way our charter read before, it really didn't have how many people who should be on the board or could be on the board. They just told us that we had to have at least 6. So putting that top end on it, but then saying, Lord, we need 9 people, explicitly saying we got the 2 board members, and then also the technology expertise, which is required already. Number 5, a board member will be appointed the committee's chair by the chairman of the board. I just moved that one line up for continuity purposes with with line number 3. The third paragraph, third sentence was an addition. Non-board members wishing to serve on the Audit and Finance Committee will be required to submit a formal application, a resume, and a letter of interest to the district staff. Following submission, the Audit and Finance Committee will make recommendations to the Board of Trustees. Let me put this down. To the Board of Trustees for final approval of vacant/renewable slots. Now, Mr. Grabowski, I know you had something you wanted to add in there as well, right?
Yes, I was, it was part of the discussion so that we didn't get into a situation where it looked like we were cherry picking our members. I think the one thing I was going to recommend Mr. Calhoun was to add in that the process for soliciting the applications would be, placed on the financial committee with a posting in the newspaper.
Right. So yeah, the posting.
Yeah, just to publicize, correct.
All right, and putting a time limit of like, say, have it posted for 30 days or so.
Correct. That sounds reasonable, Ms. Carlin.
Is there an application already, like a formal application put together, or? I'm thinking that a letter and a resume put together why you want to serve and, your background qualifications would be sufficient for it. But I didn't know if there was like a formal background investigation or anything like that that's needed on those sides that we're participating with the application process. I wouldn't think so. Sure.
So there's not actually an application, but I do have a copy of the last time we put this in the paper. It basically just says CCSD seeks 1 community volunteer to serve on the district's Audit and Finance Committee. And then it talks about, your qualifications and what the committee's looking for. I mean, we could certainly build upon that if the Audit and Finance Committee wants to do that.
Right.
Where are you creating more work if it's not necessarily needed, or recapturing something that's already in the letter resume?
Right. Yeah, I was going up when I put that part in there. I was doing it based off of the city's requirement for joining the committee. So the city actually has a website for, say, like if you wanted to join the mayor's committee on children, youth, and family, or any of the community-based organizations or committees up under the mayor's office. They have a site where you put in you basically fill out the application and just attach a resume and a quick statement of interest that you wanted to do it. So that's where I pulled that from. But if well, are you saying we shouldn't just have the application? We just just submit the resume and the letter of interest?
I mean, I'm not opposed to having an application on there. I guess I'm worried about creating extra work to create something if we have a means to get it. But if there's a potential to do it online or something like that, that makes sense.
Right. And the application really just had, name, address, what part of town you lived in, what name, address, what part of town you lived in, and then everything else will come from your resume and whatnot. It was just, I guess, my understanding is just a way for them to capture that, bring the application, resume, and letter of interest in. And then that way it's all sorted in one place, but I don't know if we would have to build that type of system out with CCSD.
I was gonna say, maybe put a word in there that makes it possibly or option, like for the application piece, if it's something we want to ask for at a later date on it, but because I think capturing that information is important as well too, potentially.
Say that again.
I was gonna say, if there's a way we can make it, I don't know, we want to firmly say we absolutely have to have an application, resume, and letter of interest. I mean, I'm more geared towards the resume and letter of interest on it. But maybe, with the application process, unless it's easy to build out or something like that, I might be overthinking it.
Yeah, I might think that the cover letter and resume are likely to provide most of what we need, and I'd be reluctant to try to add too much additional, administrative burden on either staff or, whoever's on the committees managing it, or the applicants who you're trying to encourage to come do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it's something simple, like it's an online link to follow to submit, and that can be built easily, different story, but yeah.
Right. Because I don't know what our what our, if we are able to use like Google Docs, or Google Forms or something like that, as far as from the district side, where you can just put some quick things in and toss in, or upload your resume, upload your letter of interest. Ms. Carlin, or anyone that you have any idea about that?
Well, yeah, but the qualifications are pretty specific. I wanted to read that to y'all really quickly. It says it must have a medium to large corporation work experience in finance, financial auditing, banking, economic development, business management, or information technology. Must be willing to commit to a minimum of 1, and then parentheses, 2 to 4 hour meeting monthly. Additional meetings may be called as the business requirements of the committee dictate. Additional meetings are not anticipated to exceed 1 meeting per month. But then the next paragraph says the committee serves solely in an advisory capacity, making recommendations to the board on financial and audit related matters. Committee responsibilities include a review of the district's interim financial reports, recommending policies that maintain and improve the financial health and integrity of the district, and oversight of the internal and external audit functions.
So is your point there that with those requirements, we're not usually flooded with hundreds of applicants?
Thank you, sir. That is true.
All right. So would it be, y'all want to, as of right now, just go away with the application and just say submit the letter of interest and resume?
I would agree. I think that would be wise.
All right. Take out the application, letter of interest and resume, and then add in, as of right now, add again the posting for 30 days and basically the process for solicitation. All right.
Great, thank you.
All
And
right.
next item.
The next one will be a member's term can be extended beyond 2 years if recommended by the chairman of the board and affirmed by a vote of the board. Wherein this one went over to a member's term may be extended beyond the 2-year term if recommended by the chairman of the Audit and Finance Committee. Upon the recommendation from the chair, the non-board member shall submit again, we take out the formal application and just put the letter of interest and renewal to district staff. At the subsequent Audit and Finance meeting, the committee shall vote to send their recommended slate to the Board of Trustees for final approval. Yeah, and that's just for basically equaling out not even equaling out, but standardizing the process of how do we move forward with renewing everyone's seat if they want to be renewed. I believe before it was just a conversation, and then you all said yes. It would just be doing the same thing, the letter of interest of renewal and resubmitting resubmitting the letter of interest this time. So formalizing the process. Any questions on that one?
So as I see it, Mr. Calhoun, the only real, other than completing a term, the only action that someone can be removed from the committee would be by not attending and participating.
Attend and participating, or if they did if they did not resubmit the interest of renewal. So say if the term is coming up and the letter of interest of renewal is not sent in, then they will no longer serve on the board, or serve on the committee.
Because we are removing that catch-all language that a lot of us don't agree with, but it's there. The voting members shall serve at the pleasure of the board and are expected to attend each meeting, which is not as violent as some of the other wording that we've seen in other charters.
So that would be number 9. Oh, wait, no.
Well, it's,
We're gonna take it out. Is that where we at right now?
mhm. Yeah, it's the sentence above the paragraph we just talked about.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, again, like you said, with just dealing with some of the other charters that we're dealing with, I think we might as well go ahead and take that part out. I'm open for discussion unless, and also if there's some type of legal reason that we need to have that in there, I would say we take it out and, we deal with how we're gonna actually handle our committee as opposed to just saying the will of the board. I never really ever agreed with that type of language because the community is serving at although they are serving the board by being an advisory group, they're also serving the community by actually hopping on this committee and volunteering inside of this role. So yeah, I don't think it's necessary, but I'm willing to hear what everybody else thinks.
It's a tough one, Darren, because I agree with you. I'm not, it's such a vague statement. Voting members serve at the pleasure of the board and are expected to attend each meeting. I mean, I agree that sentence is not needed. But I just wonder if there's some other sentence, and I don't know the legal answer to this, to whereas we can just say that the only reason you can be removed from the board is by failing to attend, 50% of the meetings. I just don't. I don't know.
So some organizations deal with this issue of you have people who are on a board and most of the time you want them to be able to serve out their term. But you want the ability to remove them for
Cause.
whatever reason you might want to remove them. So I could envision a sort of super majority of either this committee or of the board, some sort of higher level standard than a majority. Because you don't want people to move in and out based on the whims of
the board
of anything. But if you had a super majority or some higher threshold, 80%, super majority gets defined usually as 60%, 2/3, or sometimes 80%. That term varies depending on the organization. But
how do you feel about that, Darren?
I absolutely agree with that. A supermajority. So basically, it'd be like a supermajority clause for removal.
Absolutely.
we should define what that super majority is because it means different things to different people.
Whether it's 6, 2/3 or 80%.
Yeah, 2/3 of the board.
Yeah,
2/3 of the committee and then the board, or should we just go straight 2/3 of the board?
I think it's the committee's choice because it's the committee's charter.
So it goes through the same process of goes to the committee, then it goes to the board. So 2/3 of the committee to be approved by the board.
Absolutely.
You need that vote. Ultimately, the decision lays at the board level. But you need to have that.
You're gonna have to speak into your mic, Mike.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I
you
can't
can't
hear
hear you.
I was gonna say both, the committee and the board, but also you want to have that super majority.
Right.
You're still not speaking into your mic. I didn't quite hear you.
I was gonna say both, the board and the committee, and then agree with the super majority comments.
Yeah.
So,
But we just need to be very clear about what language we mean. And I don't care what it is, but whether it's a super majority, meaning exactly 2/3, and is that enough? Or do you need one more? Do you need more than a super? Just whatever language we use, we need to be really clear because sometimes sometimes this language isn't clear.
Okay. So what I'll do, I want to look at a couple other supermajority clauses. And if y'all have any, please send them over. We can take a look at those and we can decide on the exact language of how to do that. Because removal is, I think that's a really a big deal that we need to look at. Now we want to make sure we get that exactly right before we send this over.
I agree. Thank you.
The next one we have would be deleted and add to next paragraph. Oh, okay. So, okay. So I see where we had. Yeah, I took that down and pulled it down to the other. So I added a paragraph here. Committee members are expected to attend all audit and finance committee meetings, basically coming from off of our old solicitation. If a member is unable to attend, said member should contact the chair, vice chair, or secretary of the committee. Failure to attend 50% of the committee meetings throughout the committee year, which would be November to November, will lead to a recommendation of removal from the chair to the Audit and Finance Committee to then be sent to the Board of Trustees for final approval. Any committee member up for removal action should have the opportunity to speak in their defense during the recommendation motion. And so this is where we were looking, we were tossing that information about the 2/3 majority, the super majority clause as well. So that way we can keep that all consistent within, within the charter. And I believe I named that one removal. Looking at it right now. Committee membership. I'll also title that, I will title that section as removal from committee, and add the supermajority clause in there. All right. I only added one bullet to the I only added one bullet point: work in good faith with district staff through the direction of a superintendent. But I honestly, I'm thinking about that. We might. Yeah, I added that so we wouldn't have all of us directing the staff, and if we have us working with the staff with direction from the superintendent, it basically streamlines everything. What do y'all think about that?
I think it's a good practice. I think you could open it up to the CFO as well. Don't shoot me. But I do think directing the feedback through one point of contact is reduces our risk of burning everybody out.
Ms. Carlin, what do you think?
No, I'm in agreement with that as well. Thank you.
Right. And the last change I was looking at was the annual charter update and review. This is what I was talking about at the beginning. In August of each committee year, the chair should appoint a subcommittee led by the vice chair to review audit and finance committee charter. The subcommittee should consist of 25% of members of the subcommittee. The subcommittee will be charged to review the charter for any changes or updates, present the changes as information at the September audit and finance meeting, and present as an action at the October audit and finance meeting. Following the vote of the committee, the recommended update shall be sent to the Board of Trustees for final approval. The changes to the charter will take effect the subsequent November following the annual appointment of the chair. So basically that gives us the timeline of when we start to actually be looking at our charter. If we see something that's not working within a year, or we wanted to add something or take something out, we start the review in August. We start the review in August, so by September, we're actually talking about it and having the conversation that we're having right now. October, we're looking to have the action because by that point we'll be having we should have some hard language to go to the October meeting. I put that other part in there about the about November, so we can continue going because the official committee year starts when the board chair appoints the audit and finance chair. So I wanted to put it like that, so where we're running the same exact way until the new chair comes on or the chair is renewed or whatnot, and then we move forward that way. The 25% is I put it as 25% just in case, say if we have 9 members or if we have 6 members, we always have more than 1 or 2 people just working on it. And so that's where I put the 25%. Any questions about that one or thoughts about that one?
So the subcommittee, just clarifying this sentence, the subcommittee should consist of a quarter of the members of the subcommittee. So are you saying that the subcommittee should consist of 25% of the members of the Finance and Audit Committee, or is that the other subcommittee you're referring to?
Yeah, so we will have a subcommittee up under us. We'll be looking at our own charter. So it'll be the subcommittee of whoever's on the Audit and Finance Committee who will be looking at our own charter and then moving forward throughout the months with it. I think I answered your question.
Yeah, I would maybe change that from 25% of the members of the subcommittee to 25% of the members of the audit.
All right, yeah, so make it different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make it a little clearer.
And you might want to make it at least 25% because it's rare that we might not exactly fit. We might, if we don't have 8 or 10 members, if we got 9 members, we can do exactly 25%.
Right, at least. And then we'll do the Audit and Finance Committee. But that's what I have, and if y'all have any other thoughts on anything else that we should change?
One question I've had is, where do we put in the charter talking about, sub or other committees that we're on? So for like my responsibility, I'm on Audit and Finance, and by default, I'm then chairman of IT steering committee, but we don't mention that in this charter. We have our own charter for the IT steering committee, but the chairman of the IT steering committee is the Audit and Finance IT person. So in here, we don't mention that as like a responsibility for the IT person.
Right. The same comment for the Citizens Oversight Steering Committee, because I believe the chair of the Oversight Committee automatically has a chair, or not chair, I'm sorry, a membership on this committee as well too. So we might want to make sure the charters mix or talk to each other, excuse me.
Yeah, I think we should add both of those in, make it explicit. Steve, you actually write up what you think we should put in for that. And both of those can go under one. We can put both of those, we'll merge both of those up under one as like the automatic, what do you call it? Automatic seats, I guess. So, and Stephen, let me get this. You, as you are the, because you're on this committee as our IT person, you're automatically on their committee, or because you're on their committee, you're automatically on our committee?
Or at least the way that I was told when I came on was that since I was the IT person on the Audit and Finance Committee, by default, you then became the chairman of the IT Steering Committee. And the IT Steering Committee, was like a subcommittee of the Audit and Finance.
Okay. So
and we do have our own charter, but it's, I believe I have to go back and take a look at it to make sure, but it's designed that, this committee is the subcommittee of the Audit and Finance Committee. They're tied together.
Right.
A little bit of function of circumstance, because we didn't have that. I don't think we had that IT steering committee previously. And only when Steve came on and was doing a great job, and we realized we needed to have an IT steering committee, and he was gracious enough to agree to chair it, we did that. That works great now. There could be a circumstance where we have somebody for whatever reason who's in the IT seat, but for some reason we don't want to chair that committee. I can't imagine what that circumstance would be. I'm okay with.
I see where you're going. We could break. Yeah, it could be broken out that Audit and Finance is one committee, and then there's an IT steering committee that's completely independent. It doesn't have to be. Maybe there is. They share. There's one person that's common between both committees, but it doesn't have to be directly tied.
It is often that the IT risk flows up through an audit committee, so it's reasonable if we want to tie it and say that, just like as you were going down this path, I think it's reasonable if we were to say whoever's the IT position on this committee will also chair the IT steering committee. I'm saying it doesn't have to, but I think that's a reasonable position for us.
All right, so Stephen, can you give us the language that you think we should put inside of for that part of it? And then what about citizens oversight?
If I can add, I'm reading straight from that charter. It says the Citizens Oversight Steering Committee Chair is appointed by the CCSD Board of Trustees Chair. The Citizens Oversight Chair will also serve on the Audit and Finance Committee. So it appears the way that that'll work in the future is that once the Citizens Oversight Committee is established and the board chair, our board chair picks the chair of that committee, they're automatically on the Audit and Finance Committee.
That's fine too. I mean, in a sense, that lets the board chair pick a person to be on this committee.
From the Citizens Oversight Steering Committee panel, which are nominated by the mayors,
Right.
Chamber of Commerce, and the Charleston County Council.
So then, Mr. Calhoun, you would have, instead of at least 6, that would be 5, and then you'd have another dedicated, like you do for, like you have for the information technology, since that is an automatic.
So I think that won't be an automatic. Information technology, we choose somebody on our end who fits that criteria to basically have that to have that slot. That one's not an automatic because they still have to go through. That one still has to go through the process. What it sound from what I'm hearing from Ms. Barori, that one we have whenever it comes to fruition, we don't have a choice on that one, right?
Yeah, but I'm just talking about how you have it broken down
Right.
in your 3rd paragraph of your revisions.
Right.
You have that it would be no more than 9, but then you have 6, and then you have the 2 board members, and then you have the information technology person. So would you then add like 1 person for the other position and then change that to 5?
That's what I'm thinking. And y'all can tell me what y'all feel about this. I like working on odd number committees. So just we can actually have a committee that I wouldn't have 10 because if we deadlock, then we just deadlock. But we probably do exactly what you're saying, Ms. Stanton. Go ahead and drop that 6 down to 5. What do y'all think?
Mr. Callen, I think we have to identify it within our charter, and then I think it behooves you and I to get the chair to get the citizen committee up and running again. Because I have to.
It's up and running. Right now. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, Michael is that he holds.
Oh,
that
so
seat.
you are the.
Correct. So.
There you go, Darren. It's up and running, and there it is.
So like Ms. Stanton was saying, we just need to clarify it.
We just need to clarify. That's absolutely good.
All right, so yeah, let's add that in. And can you all right, so can we get that language sent in as well so we can just add those into that 3rd paragraph?
And that way we keep it at 9. Is it the charter's just not clear as to that? And I think we clarify and that makes sense.
All right. So with all this being said, I would like to postpone this one more time to November so we can have the final look at everything, have everything put in, and then send it in November. Send it to the board in November.
Any further comments to Mr. Calhoun? Darren, great work. I think we're moving ahead. I think.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I will I'll share this with everyone on the committee so you can start making your changes and we can start working on one document.
And Stephen, if you could get over to Darren the proposed language, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I'll do it before the end of today.
Perfect.
So we'll postpone this until the November meeting as an action item. Moving on to item 3A, which is the 2023-2028 capital program phase 5 sales tax early out projects. Information report by Ms. Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Grabowski and committee members. I'm sorry. This item is an informational item related to the Phase 5 sales tax program that goes from 2023 to 2028. This item is to inform the committee that we are transferring 6.1 million of the $60 million from the spring 2022 early out ban to pay for where we are within construction, design of the 14 projects that are listed within the item itself. I'll be happy to go over all 14 if you would like. I will say that of the $60 million, we have spent about 54 million, which is great news. And we do intend to spend the remainder of the funding by the end of this year. But that's what I have for this item.
Any questions from the committee for Ms. Shaw? Hearing none, I'd like to move that, or this is only for information purposes.
Yep.
So we can move on to item. Thank you very much, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, sir.
Item 3B, the monthly capital projects report.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm presenting the August 2023 capital projects report. Our monthly revenue collections for the 2023 through 2028 sales tax program phase 5 came in $112,340 below the cash flow model projection based on the most recent collections with a 2% growth over prior year. Expenses for the month of August are as follows. 2010 to 2016 capital building program phase 3 had 18,000 in expenses. 2017 to 2022 capital building program phase 4 had 1.2 million in expenses. 2023 to 2028 capital building program phase 5 had 7.3 million in expenses. And the 2023 through 2028 capital building program phase 5 long-term debt program had 358,000 in expenses. And that completes the presentation. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? So once again, we're still tracking low on the sales tax revenue projections.
Yes, sir.
So we're now 5 months in a row, about 5 months in a row. And this month, it was only 300,000.
112.
Oh, I mean, 112.
That's the blood.
And what was it?
112,340.
That's being pretty consistent. On those calculations, are those, I mean, how far out, I mean, if you know, are they making these calculations pretty up to date? Like this would have been the August numbers or the August returns, or are they a couple of months back?
This would have been the July collection.
It would have been July collections. Okay. So we'll just have to watch that and hope that the wedding season kicks in and the beautiful weather's here and everybody comes back to Charleston. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Any questions from the committee? Moving on to the ESSER update. Ms. Carlin.
Thank you. So I'll just skip ESSER 1 because we've fully spent the $13.4 million that was allocated to us. As far as ESSER 2, actual to date spent through August 31st was $1.7 million. I'm happy to report over on the remaining side, the total remaining, which is $618,000, has been spent and in the process of being claimed. And so we have, the district has done a very good job of spending the full $72.6 million that it was allocated for ESSER 2. For ESSER 3, FY24 actual to date is approximately $855,000, and we have approximately $26.3 million encumbered. Most of that encumbrance is related to salaries and benefits. Remaining to be spent is approximately $56.8 million. This number does not include any of the bonus money that we've tried to put aside, so just want to point that out. And we are up to date on all of our reimbursements, meaning everything that we've spent to date, we've been reimbursed for. And so,
That's great.
yes. And so, starting with the September report, several of you had asked for a more detailed report showing by object. And so we'll be able to do that starting with the next report in September. And that'll just be for ESSER 3 funds, because by then ESSER 2 is fully spent and claimed. Any questions?
Any questions, Ms. Carlin, from the board?
We have one quick question. Have we already started the process of doing a reallocation, not the reallocation, the request to the government for I guess it would be reallocating the funds?
For the ESSER bonus? Yes, sir. So that was sent to the state a little over a week and a half ago. They did respond back to us to let us know that they are working through all of the ESSER 2 amendments right now. And so everything that's been required, or excuse me, that's been requested for ESSER 3 has been put to the side. So I do appreciate them letting us know nothing's wrong, because usually by now we've heard something, back from the state. But I think they just have to work through all these ESSER 2 last minute amendments and claims. So hopefully we'll hear something, if not by the end of the week, the beginning of next week.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I notice on the website that the dashboard has been updated towards it automatically shows the ESSER 3 spending?
Yes, we try to update that on a monthly basis. And I honestly have not taken a look at it, so I'm not familiar with the numbers, but yes, I'm sure Clady Brown as well as Business Intelligence have updated that.
Yeah, that's what I printed up. So it's the first time I had seen that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I thought it was helpful in how up to date it was.
Okay. Thank you.
Hearing no further questions, Ms. Carlin, regarding the ESSER update, we will move on to item 3D, which is the FOIA information request. Come on, Peter.
Okay.
And Mr.
Yeah,
Calhoun, I think this is yours.
Yeah, I was on mute. I'm sorry. I requested it because I know I've realized we've been getting a lot of FOIA requests, and I actually was on a panel I was sitting in on a panel recently about a lot of the ESSER funding. I know most of the times when you're getting FOIAs, if it's not within the public interest, within the public interest or what is deemed to be within the public interest, we charge the fee for where there's going, where those funds that we collect from a community member. We collect those funds from the community members to go towards the different things. And I asked Ms. Carlin about where's the money from the FOIA requests are coming in. Where they're actually going and where they're reflected within the general operating fund, which as you can see, she responded saying it's going to the miscellaneous revenue. I thought we would have had a lot more, because I'm sure the district is bogged down with FOIAs. And I guess from last year, we only collected $605 and $90 from the year before. But then also my other question would have been that I think I can ask at a later point would be, who's making the final determination of when are we going to actually collect fees, or when are we actually going to collect fees? But then it led me to a question about the general counsel and looking at how much we were paying in legal fees as a district. And as you can see, from the attachments that we have, we spent about $1.4 million in legal fees. And I was going to ask about when are we going to start looking into in-house legal, because this is an exorbitant amount of money on legal fees just for, was this just for last year, Ms. Carlin?
Mr. Calhoun, I'm happy to ask Vanessa Denny, whose offices manages the FOIA request, to speak to that along with Mrs. Carlin, if that's sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Denny, you can have my seat if you like it. Okay. I don't blame you. Yeah.
You can use this.
No, thank you. Neither. Speaking of microphone. Thank you, Ms. Denny.
So Ms. Carlin did just share with me that the documents that she provided to the committee are indeed for just one year. So we've just confirmed that. As far as your other question about who makes the determination and on what, I think I heard you say, on what grounds are those determinations made? I think that's an area of opportunity for our district. I think we do together and would love the help and support of the Audit and Finance Committee need a guideline so that there's not somebody making that determination. Last year, I can tell you there was one situation with a FOIA request, and we did request a fee because of the amount of time that it would have taken. It had to do with the review of security footage. And so other than that, we've really declined to request fees. And I hear your point, and I think it's a real opportunity for the district to create a set of guidelines that's standard and reasonable and evenly applied for all requests.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm not saying we need to go ahead and make this one of our cash cows right here, because, you know, the information is public. You know, we want the public to be accessible to it, but like you said, if it's getting to a point to where it's not getting to a point, but if it's a request that's going to take so much staff time, we need to be able to recoup some of that as well. But like I said, there are some instances where, you know, something is legit for the public good, so it's going to be so in the, you know, the people need or want that information to hold anybody accountable, and just keep information open. But sometimes we do need to go ahead and collect those fees, and like $605, $90 or so. We're not about to go to one of the restaurants out here with that. So yeah, I think it's something we should look at over the next year or so.
Our philosophy has really been to keep that information open and available to the public free of charge. But to your point, it becomes just a question, I think, for us to consider what the answer is.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm wondering, Mr. Calhoun, if this isn't something that we shouldn't, you know, take as one of the agenda items to the board for informational purposes, as an item that we're discussing that the committee feels strongly about, because I would assume this is going to require a policy change, which means we'll have to take it to a different level of, you know, review, but it is something that the committee has noticed, as you've picked up astutely. So I think what we do is we'll just move this on, if you don't mind, and being the spokesperson and take the lead of this, explain to the board why we were discussing this.
We can do that.
And Mr. Calhoun, just to follow up on your inquiry regarding in-house counsel, I did ask this week that Mr. Brigman, our chief HR officer, pull the job description for the staff attorney and forward that to Dr. Gallion and me for review. And so we'll be working with him in regards to next step on that.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, because $1.4 million is wild for a year. That's wild. You take half of that and make an entire department.
Just
Cool.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fanning. I was reviewing the recurring agenda topics, and I noticed that from past years, as part of the charter, that from the committee that we should have been working on some type of budget calendar. How do you want to address that with the board? I mean, I don't.
We probably should wait.
I think we can pass it on, move it on to the November board.
Yeah, I think we should possibly wait.
Thank you.
Okay. With that being said, the next item would be item 4, what items are moving on to the committee? It would be the 8% general bonds, 2A. 2B, 2017-22 capital programs. 2C, the fixed cost of ownership. 2D, the approval of contracts over 250,000. And 2E, the monthly Head Start financial report. And then I would think that just for information purposes, Mr. Calhoun's report on the FOIA request and information. With that being said, is there any further business to be brought in front of the committee? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Just one question
Next
before
meeting.
you adjourn.
We need the next meeting date. November 7th. So the next.
Velma had a question. Velma, did you have a question?
Yeah, are we going to at any time really go through? I know Mr. Calhoun is going through and updating revising some of the language, and we're working on that part of it. But are we really going to look at the charter for the Audit and Finance Committee to assess whether we are really doing a number of the things that this charter has charged us to do? Because I read through a couple of times, and having been on the committee for a couple of years, I'm like, I don't think we do a number of these things. So if we can put that on the agenda for one of the agendas to really assess whether we're covering all the areas that we should under the charter.
That's right. Audit ourselves.
Well, I mean, if you read the charter, it says we should do that.
We agree.
I don't know if it would, fall under the charter itself, but it would be consistent with the concept that you laid out, where in the months leading up to November, you've got a new committee in place, you've got a charter in place. We might want to also revisit at that time our annual calendar of items that we do, but maybe more importantly, what are the key things? We've talked at different points about a variety of different things, whether it was ESSER funding or procurement or long-term financial plans. What are the priorities for this committee? When I say this committee, I mean in the future, whatever committees, in November is now established, and we've got, what do we want to accomplish over the next year? And we're not going to accomplish everybody's wants, and the staff has a finite amount of time. But if we could discuss maybe in the front end leading into November, here that what we think are the priorities for the next year or 18 months, whatever it is, and then meter out what we're going to attack when, to give the staff time to respond to the umpteen thousand requests that they get from us.
Yeah, and I think the other critical thing is to, and I think the timing is perfect too, because theoretically within November you've got a potentially new committee. Is definitely to lay out for staff and the various departments as to when we can start really looking at each department's proposed budget for the next year. I know Ms. Carlin was very nice to post her budget as, as we look at it. But now as you start to really look at all the information's there, line item, and trying to determine exactly, what that means when you're asking a department head to sit there and defend their budget, with all the unknowns. I mean, it's one thing to look at operations because they're looking 5, 10, 15 years out as it is. It's another thing with financial, knowing, this is an operational expense, but then to ask academic when they don't even know how many kids they're going to have, how many teachers they're going to have, what curriculums we're going to have. I mean, it's kind of interesting to see if you would even look at academics and, and I would have to defer to the staff as to when you would even want to tackle that one. But at the same time, you don't want to have the largest one be the one that, bites you at the end of the day when you're scrambling, to come up with a balanced budget. I think it's, Ms. Stamp, I think it's a point well taken. And I think as, Mr. Calhoun works out on these dates and everything, and, it's something that should also be taken into account, not to add on anything more to your plate, Darren, but. So I think we'll just add it as an agenda item at the next agenda so that it's properly FOIA'd and everything. Good. Anything else? Hearing none, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion, meeting, stand up, leave.